Hi, everyone. I'm Ken Fisher of Atigro. Welcome to our virtual coffee series, Leading Apps to the New Normal. Today, we focus on tips and tricks for using LinkedIn Sales Navigator. Our strategic partners in my company, Atigro, have put together a series to address issues. This week, we're going to hear from the Pro Resource team, Judy Schramm, Richard Helmer, and Anne-Marie Bebout. They're the LinkedIn experts, and we'll focus this week on performing target searches to find and contact individual prospects, enhancing your prospecting techniques, optimizing advanced search, recent updates to Sales Navigator, and optimizing practices for managing leads using lead alerts in the inbox. We'll wrap up with an update on the latest on SBA programs and a question and answer period from our favorite U.S. Small Business Administration officer, Rod Johnson. I'd like to take a moment to thank our sponsors. These sponsors have made it possible to reach the community as well as provide support for these events. In addition to our partner sponsors, we have two community sponsors for this event to help us spread the word, the Special Needs Alliance and the Tysons Regional Chamber of Commerce. If you feel we're providing a service to the community, please help us spread the word. If an upcoming event email, please send it to others. If you see one of our LinkedIn posts, please like and comment on it. We greatly appreciate it. Anne-Marie, go ahead.
Thank you so much, Ken. My name is Anne-Marie Bebout, and I'm from Pro Resource, and we are a social media marketing company that helps CEOs and executives put their best foot forward with personal branding on LinkedIn and Twitter. So I want to open up by talking about Sales Navigator in more general terms. And then Richard will follow up with details and show you exactly how to use it. So as most of you who are on LinkedIn know, LinkedIn has many levels. They constantly remind you to buy a newer, higher one. So do you know if you need Sales Navigator for your job? So Sales Navigator has a lot of features specifically designed for the sales person. So you get more detailed searches, you understand more about the person that you're looking at, and you can send messages and connect with people who aren't within your 3 degrees. So it's a little bit easier to get visibility on people who aren't already in your network. So it is useful for any kind of like single person business. If you are doing a lot of your own prospecting, if you're looking for a lot of investors, if you are hitting those search limits at the end of the month when LinkedIn starts yelling at you saying that you've done too many profile searches, then it might be worthwhile looking into Sales Navigator. Also, if you are a hunter salesperson, the $85 a month is really going to be worthwhile because it's going to save you time. You're going to be able to build beautiful lists, do wonderful searches to really streamline your process. If you're more of a farmer salesperson, then Sales Navigator helps you map organizations and find other leads that you wouldn't necessarily know about. You get a lot more visibility on an individual person and the rest of their organization. You get the high volume of searches, which you're going to be doing anyway, and the quality of searches that you get back can really help you if you're a farming salesperson. So if you are the head of a sales team, if you are hitting those sales limits on a monthly basis, if you are a single operator or in a small team as an executive, and you need to find very specific people and want to be able to keep track of them in a beautiful way, then Sales Navigator is for you. So Richard, can you go ahead and show everyone how to get the most out of their searches using Sales Navigator?
All right, I am going to start by sharing my screen here. I want to make sure that everybody can see the Sales Navigator homepage here. All right then, so the most powerful, I'm going to go over all of the key features of Sales Navigator. The most powerful one is the search, but there are a lot of other useful tools that might come in handy. And I'm going to start at the front here. So when you first start up Sales Navigator, it's going to prompt you to fill out some questions, and it's going to give you like a base of saved companies, what they call accounts, and some leads in here, like already people you're connected with, to fill out this alerts area here. Think of it like your news feed. And what it does is it'll show you if people or companies, like they've been mentioned in the news or when they post an update. And what this is most useful for is it can help as like a conversation starter. So if you see that, again, like Morit here was mentioned in the news, you can say like, hey, I saw that, you know, you've gotten featured, and that can be a good way to sort of start a conversation. You can also sort, instead of just by relevance, by latest, so you see all the newest things. You can look for just accounts or just leads. And you can also sort by different alert types. So you can, you know, if you're specifically looking for, you know, if they were in the news or something like that, you can look at that. Next, I'm going to talk about the search function, which is, again, the most powerful part of Sales Navigator. When you first open this up and look at it, it has all these huge numbers of search criterion, and it can feel a little bit overwhelming. So I'm going to go through the ones that are the most useful to me personally in my job, and what I think would be most useful to you, because you don't need all of these. You know, some of them are things like what school they studied at. That can be helpful in some small cases. Again, you're looking for something you have in common with a lead and you want to, you know, have a good way of starting a conversation with them. But generally speaking, like, that's not something you're going to look for leads based on. So it's there, it can come in handy, but you can usually just ignore it. So keywords here at the very top, these are very useful, but I like to end my searches with them. So I'll come back to them later. Instead, what I usually start with is geography. So this is pretty broad. Like you see, it starts you off with Africa and continents, APAC. That's a little bit too much. I'm going to focus on the Washington, DC, Baltimore area. That's where I'm located. That's where most of you are located. And so, you know, a lot of business is happening here. But you can even look, you can look countrywide, you can look based on states. Again, it's really flexible, very useful. Relationship is how far apart your connection is. Sometimes you're looking within your first connections, but often you're just going to look at second-degree connections or third-degree connections plus. But, you know, there are other ways this can come in handy. Industry is also often useful. So this is, again, you know, what the company that they work for is in. We do a lot of business with, say, information technology and services, but there's also hospital and healthcare, government administration. It's a fairly long and exhaustive list. One thing to keep in mind about it, though, is that it won't have what you might always think of as an industry. For example, we've had clients who want us to look for manufacturers. That's fairly common, but there is no manufacturing industry. So you have to sort of work around the list and look for like what's the most common, where do manufacturers tend to show up in the industries that LinkedIn has available, and use those to refine your searches. But instead, since I'm not looking for that today, I'm just going to focus on IT and, you know, associated services. Again, schools, not super helpful. First name, last name. I mean, if you know who you're looking for, you don't need Sales Navigator. Seniority level is also something we use a lot. Generally speaking, when we're looking for prospects, we're looking for decision makers at the company. So, you know, who's in charge, who is, you know, capable of actually helping us when we do when we want to, like, you know, sell something or help them sell something or things like that. So we'll narrow it based on owner, partner, and CXO. Often we'll go to VP and director levels, but for the sake of this example search, we're just going to stick with this. If you're doing recruiting or something like that, looking at lower levels can be useful, but it often isn't in what we're doing. Years in current position is also very frequently useful, because again, if you're looking to sell things, often you want newer people who, you know, they're new at the company, they sort of have the political influence, they can start, you know, making new decisions, selling new things. So we'll often look at people who've been in position, you know, relatively recently and you know, haven't necessarily gotten sort of set in their ways as much and are willing to try new things. Years of current company is similar to current position, but we don't use it as much. Function is also something we'll frequently use. I'm not going to use it in this search, but again, if you're looking for people within a specific department, like, for example, sales, you can do that. Especially at larger companies, this is really helpful. You know, removes people who aren't looking for what you're doing, things like that. But what I often use to narrow things is the title here. So instead of going by function or keywords, I'll look for people who, you know, are maybe the CEO or they're in sales, And not, instead of using the functions, I'll use the title to narrow my search in that way. Maybe something like the CMO2, the Chief Marketing Officer. And what this does is when you search by title like this, you don't need an exact match. So if I search someone, if I just search sales there, it'll give me people who are, you know, the CXO for say, have sales in their title if they're CXOs or owners or partners. So even though it's not an exact match, this is a good way to really narrow down your searching, your focus, without, you know, coming in with the function and getting, you know, a much broader brush. Title is generally more specific. Years of experience we don't use very much. The company filters, these are similar to the account filters. So if you're searching for companies, but the most important one for us is usually company headcount. So we work mostly with small businesses. So we'll look at, you know, 1 to 10, maybe 11 to 50, and 51 to 200. And so you can, again, this is a great, since LinkedIn doesn't let you narrow by revenue, this is sort of the closest you can get for that, is figuring out what are the approximate headcounts for companies like those, and making sure that you're getting that, you know, more or less right. And that can be, that's the best way to sort of narrow based on company size as opposed to revenue. Company type, we don't use very much. Past company, sometimes you're looking for people who used to work somewhere, that can be useful, but again, it's fairly narrow. The other filters are things that are unique to LinkedIn, so you can mostly ignore those. Now, as I've been doing this process, you may have noticed the number up here, the 406 results. As you add more criterion, that number will usually get smaller and smaller and smaller. And this is a good way to say, like, well, 406 people, that's kind of a lot. Do I want that many? So I'll go back here and say, well, I'm actually not sure I want CMOs. 400 is a little too much for me to be, well, I didn't actually cut it down very much. So we'll remove sales here. And we only lost 20 people, which, you know, isn't a huge narrowing. So I could, in that case, try and use something like keywords, like, you know, information technology. And what this does is it searches within those people's profiles. And so only people that have the phrase information technology will show up there. The key thing to remember, though, is this can be at any point in their profile. So this could be their past jobs, their current jobs, you know, even just their skills, or maybe even the awards section. So like the more people fill out the profile, the more likely different keywords are to show up. It's also a Boolean search. So I put it in parentheses there, so that'll make sure the whole phrase information technology shows up. If I want to make sure that I'm getting IT as well, I might add or IT again, IT in parentheses. However, often searching for IT isn't great because it shows up the word it, which basically every profile should have. So I'm actually going to delete that and not use that in this search. So I think that this is sort of narrow enough for me to start with. I'm going to hit the search button and see what shows up. So we've got President and Principal Director, Dr. J Enterprises, SL Jordan here, Michelle Corrin, CEO at Legatum LLC. And this is just going to show you, again, LinkedIn's ordering isn't always totally obvious, but you know, all these people will be CEOs at a company with 11 to 200 people that do information technology services. You know, someone like SL Jordan here who showed up and is President and Principal Director, he probably is CEO at a different company. So if we open up his profile and take a look through here, this has all the same portions of a normal LinkedIn profile. It's just organized a little bit differently. So we can see he has a well filled out profile. I guess he may be not a CEO right now, but you know, President and Principal Director is relatively similar. If you aren't comfortable with Sales Navigator because it looks differently, you can always look at their profile on regular LinkedIn. The simplest way to do that is click on the 3 dots here, and where it says View on LinkedIn, you can do that, and it'll pop up with the normal LinkedIn view. Now, let's say I like this search, but I need to go somewhere else. You know, something's come up, I've got to leave. You can save searches and keep them around. So you'll hit the Save Search button up here, and just, you know, it default names to like your numbered search or whatever, but it's best to, you know, so this is the virtual coffee example. Alert frequency, the default is weekly. I'd sort of leave it to that. But what this does is for the alerts, it will let you know when some of the results in the search have changed. Basically, since CEO is a title that, people start new companies all the time, small companies hire new people. And that way you can go, when you have the search, you can just click on the most recent changes. I'm going to go ahead and save it. And it will show you the new people. And that way you can really look at like who's just gotten in, who's just changed. And again, that's a good way to do a conversation starter. Similarly, up here, you have more information like who's changed jobs in the past 90 days. Well, once it loads, who's posted on LinkedIn in the past 30 days. And these are basically good measures of how active a person is on LinkedIn. And the more active they are, the more likely they are to be responsive to outreach. So we often will start with, who's posted on LinkedIn, who's, being active. And it's also a good way to start a conversation. You can say, hey, I saw your recent post, your recent article. I think that's really interesting. Do you want to have a conversation? Stuff like that. To go back and access the search I saved, you just click on Saved Searches up here, which I've opened in a new tab. And see, I've got the virtual coffee example. Since nothing has changed in the past 2 minutes, unsurprisingly, there's nothing there. But if I were to look at this Chief Diversity Officer one, a diversity officer search back here, there are 460 new results. So clicking on this would show me all the new people who've shown up since last time I checked that search, which may even have been a few months ago at this point. But if I just click on virtual coffee example, it comes back up here. Now let's say, to go back to SL Jordan here, I liked his profile. This is someone I'm interested in contacting eventually, but I want to keep going through my searches. You can do what's called saving someone to a list. And this is also how you track people. So again, I'm going to do virtual coffee example 1023. And I'm going to, you can, give it a description too, in case you're going to come back to this way later and create and save. And as you add more people to this, like if I were to open a new profile like Michelle Coram here, I could similarly click on here and save her to virtual coffee example. And then when I click on lists up here, this will then just, and then click on virtual coffee example 1023, this just brings up, everybody that I've saved to the list. And you can make notes on like, have I sent a message to them? What have I done that's new? When are they added to the list? You can connect with them or message them from here, or look at view similar, things like that. And this is just a very useful way of tracking your results and tracking what you've been doing. And so we make use of lists a lot. If I look at actions up here too, one thing I use frequently is to check my, my success. I'll click on search for leads. And what I can do is now I can search within that list. And a thing I'll do a lot is look at relationship and first degree connections. And so if I have 30 people on the list and I've sent connect requests to all of them or messages to all of them, then this will show me how many of them connected, and that can let me assess so how successful is my messaging, who actually connected, who do I need to follow up with, things like that. And this can all help you keep track of all of that. The other key search function, so I'm going to go back to home to start again, is the account filters. And this is basically their way of saying looking for companies. So it has some of the same, search features. Like again, I'm just going to start with the geography, the Washington, D.C., Baltimore area. Can search within industries. Again, I'm going to do information technology and services. But the really great thing about the account search is the size filters. So you can look within a specific department and see how big that department is. So if I'm looking to connect with, people in the finance department at given companies, and I want to make sure, there's at least 10 people there, but, not more than, say, 50, just arbitrarily choosing these values. Already, I've gone from 7,500 to just 68 results. I can also look at their department headcount growth. So how much has the finance department grown in the past year? Obviously, we don't want them shrinking because they probably aren't looking to, buy new services. And so we want to make sure that, there is growth going on. They're hiring new people. And again, we've cut our search in half. Here, you can also search for revenue. But our experience has been that the revenue parameters, the data aren't totally accurate. So we tend to avoid these in favor of the headcount stuff. Hopefully, as LinkedIn develops and they get more of this stuff, this will get more accurate and more useful. But right now, this isn't as helpful. You can also look at their overall headcount, their headcount growth. How much are they growing these days? If they're on the Fortune 500 anywhere. And lastly, the really useful one is technologies used. This is another one that's still sort of in development. They aren't totally accurate. But again, it gives you like what technology are they developing with, what are they using, like Microsoft Azure, they do stuff for iPhone. And so this again can be really, really helpful if you're looking to sell to companies that, are doing, you work in a very specific industry and you want to make sure that the technologies you're using are compatible. Again, that list is still updating, still populating, still relatively new, but it is very helpful. And if I were to look at this search, it's showing me companies like Dysys or IDEXL. Say if I take a look here, obviously I'm not going to go through the full analysis of everything, but if I like them, I can then save them to my saved accounts, and they're going to start showing up back home along with the people I saved in my person search earlier. They start showing up in the alerts here at the front. And so this can, again, help you start conversations and get information like what new is going on with IDEXL or with, the 2 people I saved to my saved searches. You can also jump back into recent searches or recent people you looked at. So like I can look at Michelle Korn again, or the virtual coffee example search, or the lead list here, and that'll just pop right back in here. The last thing I want to cover is inbox quirks on LinkedIn Sales Navigator. So if I were to say send a connect request or a message to Michelle Korn here, then I would get responses in my Sales Navigator inbox here. And most of our clients we work with, they aren't as comfortable. They don't know as much about Sales Navigator inbox because it's new to them and they aren't used to it. And they'd much rather work in their normal LinkedIn inbox here as opposed to their Sales Navigator inbox. And the easiest way I found to do that, to make sure that conversations stay on normal LinkedIn and you aren't trying to go back and forth and keep track of, well, where did I message Michelle Korn again? Was it in Sales Nav? I'll just view them on LinkedIn, on their normal LinkedIn. And then if I send a connect request from here or a message from here, then all of that will come back to the default message inbox. At any rate, that's what I have on Sales Navigator. These are sort of the best ways to do searches. Of course, we'll be around for questions later, but thank you very much for listening, and I hope that this is useful to all of you.
Thank you very much, Richard.
My pleasure.
Do we have any questions about LinkedIn Sales Navigator? If you're look at someone's profile using Navigator, are they alerted to the fact that you did like they are, as well as like your own, they can see who looked at the profile on LinkedIn.com. Can they see that if you look at them on Sales Navigator is a question?
Yes, they do know that you saw them. They won't know if you've saved it or done any other sort of interaction with it, but they will know that you've looked at their profile.
Okay.
I'll just add that there are privacy settings if you want to search anonymously. And if you may want to turn those off when you stop doing the active searching and just use LinkedIn as, regularly. But there are privacy settings and it'll say, someone from a company like this was looking at your profile.
So Anne-Marie, you can basically be anonymous when you're doing this. If
Absolutely.
You make that, yes. Okay. I have a question. What to someone who has an organization that's not using LinkedIn Sales Navigator, why would they start? Why should they start? Just take us from the, because we went into the deep dive. Why should they consider this at a top level? What have you seen change in organizations that have started using Sales Navigator? I'm not sure who wants to answer that question, but.
I think the biggest thing is, again, the power of the search. This can let you reach out to and start conversations with and form connections with, the kinds of people that, are difficult to interact with, particularly right now when, nobody can go to conferences and meeting in person is really difficult. I think a lot of companies need a new way to get, start forming relationships, and Sales Navigator is a really powerful way to make sure you're finding the right people to do that.
Great.